जय गोपी जना वल्लभा जय गिरिवरधारी जय गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे राम 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 हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे राम हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजन यामुना तीरवन चारे Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Jaya Gandharve Kagere Dhari, Gandharve Kagere Dhari, Gandharve Kagere Dhari, Gaura Hari. Jaya Nitai Gaur Sundar, Jaya Nitai Gaur Sundar, Nitai Gaur Sundar, Jaya Nitai Gaur Sundar. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Srila Prabhupada. युग धर्म हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय, ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं, देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया, भगवत्योत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। So, Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome to the Krishna Katha series, which is starting from today. We are trying, which has started from Sunday. Please accept my apology. So, till now, from now on, especially in the weekday Bhagavatam classes, we will be trying to relish various pastimes of Krishna, trying to learn from various pastimes of Krishna. And in this way, we will prepare our consciousness until we arrive at the Janmashtami. So, for today, I have tried to take few verses. Strictly speaking, it's a long list of verses, especially the idea of compiling these verses was to have kind of lessons learned from Krishna's pastimes approach. So the first 40 chapters of the Krishna book or the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto are the Vrindavan Leela of Krishna. So although each chapter is so dynamic and so diverse, and it is impossible to present the summary in any way, but still one verse from each chapter we have tried to collect. and based on that, that verse more or less represents the theme of the chapter, and based on that we are just trying to discuss it, relish it, and derive some lessons out of it. So we are starting with the first chapter. um, that's the very famous chapter where Kamsa is trying to send off Devaki, and Devaki has been married to Vasudev, and then the Akashvani happens where it is told that the eighth child of your sister Devaki will become the cause of your death. The Akashvani doesn't say son or daughter, it says eighth child. So immediately we see a complete change in the mood of Kamsa. And the Bhagavatam criticizes Kamsa for that. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport, this is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. A devotee is ready to sacrifice anything for the purpose of Krishna, but a non-devotee is ready to sacrifice anyone for their own sense gratification. So this Kamsa, who was very much endearingly loving Devaki, my dear sister, you are going away, let me drive you, let me become the charioteer. In a moment's notice, his consciousness changes. He sees that his self-security is being compromised. So he immediately catches the hair of Devaki in front of everybody. Now this is a very big thing for Kamsa to do. In order to understand the glory of the hero, the villain also needs to be properly presented so that the contrast comes. So in Bhagavatam, they don't speak much about Kamsa, but there is a book called Garg Samhita where the glories of Kamsa is described. The Kamsa is not an ordinary person. The Kamsa is introduced in Garg. I'm doing this Kamsa introduction only to help us understand how glorious Krishna is. No other intention is there. So Kamsa, he enters in Garg Samhita that Jarasandh is on a world tour and trying to conquer various parts of the planet. And then he arrives at the territory of Kamsa. And then he thinks, let me challenge him. So he sends the strongest elephant in his cavalry, whose name was Kuvalyapida. And Kuvalyapida goes rushing and breaks apart the door of the entrance door of the Mathura city and enters there. And Kamsa comes running out from his palace, stops single-handedly Kuvalyapida, catches him by his trunk, revolves him around and throws him 80 miles apart, and he goes and falls in front of Jarasandha. So when Jarasandha saw that, he realized that we cannot fight with such a person. So that, and then Jarasandha was very intelligent politically, so he thought that let me marry both my daughters to Kamsa. And in this way, he made union with Kamsa. And then Kamsa, after uniting with Jarasandha, became very strong. And then he started going on a world tour. And who was the guide of Kamsa on this world tour? Narad Muni. Narad Muni used to tell him, okay, today you have to go and defeat Arishtasur. So he used to go and defeat Arishtasur. Then next day, Narad Muni used to tell him, okay, today you have to defeat Trinavarth. And then he used to go and defeat Trinavarth. So all the demons which were coming in Krishna Leela to kill Krishna were actually servants of Kamsa. One day, Narad Muni told, you go and fight with Aghasur. So he went. Aghasur was on the banks of, on the beach of some sea, and then he defeated Aghasur very badly. And then when Aghasur was defeated very badly, her sister Putana came. Kamsa said that I don't want to ruin my reputation by fighting with a woman. So he didn't fight with Putana also. Without fighting, Putana surrendered. So that is the Virya of Kamsa. So that Kamsa, who didn't choose to fight with a woman, is now holding the hair of another woman, who is her sister, who is his sister. It's a big thing actually. And the sword is coming, and the sword is touching the neck of Devaki. And Vasudev doesn't know what to do. So there is this very nice verse from the first chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Prasanna vadanam bhojo nrishamsham nirapatrapam manasa duyamanena vihasan idam abravit. Vasudev's mind was full of anxiety because his wife was facing danger. But in order to please the cruel and shameless and sinful Kamsa, he externally smiled and spoke to him as follows. So prasanna vadanam bhojo. Although manasa duyamanena, although his mind is full of anxiety, but he's smiling. So there is a great lesson which we can derive from here. which is coming basically from the purports of Prabhupada, but I would like to share it and relish it with all of you. So, manasa duya manena, mind, body, and face. When something else is in the mind, something else is in the mind, and something else the body is doing, then it is reflected. They say face is the image of the mind or the mirror of the mind. So when the mind, face, and the body are in synchronization, then a person is called peaceful. But when something else is there in the mind and something else the body is doing, and artificially somebody is smiling, that becomes a very complicated situation, a very difficult situation. Rather, you can call it, in plain simple words, we can call it as diplomacy. So Vasudev, who was Satyavrata, who was known for speaking only the truth, we see that just after this verse, he starts glorifying Kamsa. And now we all know that there is no good quality in Kamsa. But Vasudev is glorifying Kamsa and Prasanna Vadanam Bhojo. His mind is in complete anxiety that my wife is about to be killed, but he's smiling and speaking. So, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that the material world is complicated, and to execute one's duties, one cannot avoid adopting such diplomacy. That is how the material world is. In another place, I think Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has given an analogy that this material world is like a salt mine. If you take a sweet in your hand, let's say it is rasgulla, you take some rasgulla in your hand and you're trying to cross the salt mine, and if you expect that after crossing the salt mine the sweet still remains sweet, that is hallucination. So some salt particles will definitely fall and you cannot avoid it. So basically life in this material world is very embarrassing, very abominable, and even if you have the best of the intentions, you cannot avoid getting entangled. And that is why great acharyas like Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that this world, this material world, is not a place for gentlemen. So we see that sometimes devotees of Krishna are also faced with such situations wherein, for the purpose of serving Krishna and for the purpose of saving the interests of Krishna, they also have to resort to diplomacy. Now, Vasudev was not, he was just married to his wife. And in those days, it was not like Facebook chatting, WhatsApp chatting, and Instagram photo checking. Vasudev had probably seen Devaki for the first time just few hours ago. So there's no question of lusty attachment to the wife. So without having any that attachment to the wife, why is he ready to, Vasudev, who was known for his being Satyavrata and honest, why is he ready to resort to diplomacy? The answer is that he wanted to, when he heard that the 8th child of my wife is going to kill Kamsa, so he also understood that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is going to come. So in order to save the interests of Krishna, just like when Yayati had asked his sons to give their youth to him. So one of the sons of Yayati was Yadu, the eldest son. So he knew that in future, in my dynasty, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is going to come. So in order to save the interests of if he would have given his youth, then there was no question of him having a child, no question of him having a dynasty. There is no question of Krishna appearing in the dynasty. So in order to save the interests of Krishna, people do something which is not, he said no to his father. So we see throughout the scriptures, there are various occasions where the devotees of Krishna, in order to save the interests of Krishna, in order to render service to Krishna, they have done something which may not be conventionally very pleasing or very conventionally very suitable to the situation. So here we see Vasudev doing that. So for the purpose of saving Krishna and the interests of Krishna, Vasudev acted duplicitously at that point of time, and he falsely glorified Kamsa, and then tried to get his attention, and then tried to speak something to him, and then he made that promise that please leave me and my wife, and as soon as every son or every child will be born, I'll bring him to you. Now, what we can see very practically, we can correlate this very practically in our life, that this policy of speaking in the interests of Krishna is very much valid in our own book distribution and preaching also. We need to act in a way, let's say, we need to preach according to the time, place, and circumstances. We need to distribute books according to the time, place, and circumstances. Sometimes there was a point of time when I was doing book distribution in apartments. So when I used to knock at the door, so they used to see my shaved head, and then without opening the door only, they used to say, "We have many Gitas with us." So then I took a policy. I was carrying my friend Deepak Prabhu with me, so I used to put his normal haired head in front of the after ringing the bell, and then they used to see, oh, some apartment member has come or some normal person has come, and when they would open the door, I would be seen like that, and I would almost step into the house. So then sometimes they would ask me, what is this? Something else is visible and something else is getting delivered. We used to say, this is our advertisement. This is how we work. So that was the policy. One can say that I'm not very truthful, but that was necessary for the interests of Krishna. One can say that we were being duplicitous. We were showing something else, delivering something else. Dekha to baal, khola to takla, something. But that was necessary to distribute books. So we were trying to do that. Even as far as preaching is concerned, many times we do this. We somehow or the other, somehow or the other, we bring people to the sessions. Somehow or the other, we invite them for the prasadam. Somehow or the other, we try to bring them to Krishna consciousness. And that's considered all right. Because whether we choose to do it or whether we choose not to do it, we will be forced to do it, because this material world is a very complicated place and you will be forced to become duplicitous. So better use your nature in Krishna's service and use that duplicity also in Krishna's service for the interests of Krishna, for the order of Guru. Of course, all this has to be done under guidance, but this is what we can derive a lesson from Vasudev's pastime. Now, fast forwarding to the second chapter, Kamsa has captured Devaki and Vasudev both and has put them in the prison house. One after one, the 6 sons of Vasudev were born. Kamsa would come and then he would hold the sons by one of their legs and then he would slam them on a rock and kill them on the spot. People were thinking that nobody is more unfortunate than Devaki. The 7th child got attracted from the womb of Devaki to the womb of Rohini in the 7th month. Therefore, he was called Sankarshan. So people thought Devaki suffered from miscarriage, and they were thinking that so unfortunate. And then finally, when Krishna entered into the womb of Devaki, something very spectacular happened. This is 10th canto, chapter 2, shloka 19. सा देवकी सर्व जगन निवास निवास भूतम नितरम नरेजे भोजेन्द्र गेहे अग्निशिखे वरुद्धा सरस्वती ज्ञान खले यथा सती. Devaki then kept within herself the supreme personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. So by the mercy of Krishna, or by the will of Krishna, even the inconceivable becomes conceivable, even the impossible becomes possible. So Sa Devaki Sarva Jagan Nivasa. So Krishna is called as Sarva Jagan Nivasa, that means the cause of all causes, or strictly speaking, in the translation Prabhupada writes, Sarva Jagan Nivasa means one who has all the universes within him. So one who has all the universes within him is inside the womb of Devaki. So in one way, logically speaking, Devaki has all the universes within her. Sa Devaki Sarva Jagan Nivasa. That's why it is said that Devaki who has all the universes within her. Nivasa Bhutara Nitaram Nareje. Bhojendra Gehe Agni Shikheva Ruddha. The foundation of entire cosmos. But because she was under the arrest of the house of Kamsa, she was like flames of a fire covered by the walls of a pot, or Saraswati Jnana Khale Yathasati, like a person who has knowledge but cannot distribute it to the world for the benefit of the human society. So the full translation is, Devaki then kept within herself the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the foundation of the entire cosmos. But because she was under the arrest of the house of Kamsa, Bhojendra Gehe, she was like the flames of a fire covered by the walls of a pot, or like a person who has knowledge but cannot distribute it to the world for the benefit of the human society. So there is so much we can learn from this verse also by the mercy of Prabhupada and his purports. Now, normally nobody can perceive the Lord. He is adhokshaja, he is beyond the perception of our sensory vision. But anybody who carries the Supreme Lord in the core of their heart, one who serves the Supreme Lord very sincerely, if the Supreme Lord wants, even demoniac people like Kamsa and the soldiers of Kamsa can see his presence anywhere. So this demoniac Kamsa and the servants of Kamsa, Devaki became so effulgent, tremendous glow was there on Devaki. And these sinful people could also understand that Krishna has arrived. Generally, only the Paramahamsas can understand whether, if Krishna wants, whether Krishna has arrived or not. But even non-devotees were now very sure. Kamsa, the time Devaki, got Krishna in her womb, since that time Kamsa was counting his days. He couldn't sleep at night. Every day he used to go and look at Devaki. The unparalleled beauty of Devaki could not be described in words, because she was holding the reservoir of all beauty. So even demoniac people can see Krishna if Krishna wants. So what we can learn from this is that anybody who decides to serve Krishna becomes empowered to the degree which Krishna wants. Here Devaki was so empowered that through her people could perceive Krishna. So if we also become willing instruments in the hands of the Guru Parampara, then we can also become extremely effective in the mission of Lord Chaitanya and supremely surcharged in the eyes of the Sankirtan enemies. That is how the Guru Parampara works. That's how the mercy of Krishna works. Now, it is said here that Kamsa tried to arrest Devaki in her house, in his house. Bhojendra Gehe Agni Shikhe Varuddha. So Prabhupada writes a very, very nice point in the purport. I'm quoting that. Kamsa tried to arrest Krishna consciousness within his house, Bhojendra Gehe, with the result that Kamsa, with all his opulences, was later vanquished. Similarly, the real knowledge of Bhagavad Gita was being choked by the unscrupulous politicians and leaders of India, with the result that India's culture and knowledge of the Supreme Personality was being lost. So what we understand from this is, anybody who tries to stop this Krishna consciousness movement will be destroyed. Whether it is Mr. N in Juhu or whether it is anybody else in future. Anybody who tries to stop Krishna consciousness is completely vanquished. These politicians, they were thinking, let me become secular, these kings, they were thinking, let me not help in the propagation of the Krishna consciousness, instead let's fight with each other, just expand the territories and don't care for the expansion of Krishna consciousness. So much so that Srila Prabhupada also wrote a letter to one of the leaders, politicians of India, that you are known as a great soul, but the qualification or the duty of a great soul is that they should not be engaged in politics, but should be spreading Krishna consciousness everywhere. And you are not doing that. So therefore, this title given to you is not a valid title. And if you do not stop doing this and do not actually act as per your title, then Bhojendra Gehe, you will also be destroyed. You will meet a very inglorious death. So that is the reality. Real purpose of leadership is to give spiritual knowledge. If a leader is not disseminating spiritual knowledge like Rishabh Dev amongst his praja, then he is not a leader. Therefore, in one of the morning conversations, Srila Prabhupada says that catch every leader and politician of the world and take a button. On that button, you write SR and put it on their forehead. So, Giraj Maharaj asked Prabhupada, what is this SR? Prabhupada said, simply rascal. Put it on their forehead. They are nothing, they are simply worth that only. Nothing else they are worth of. So much so that when Srila Prabhupada went to the Russian subcontinent, Russian continent, they took him to the graveyard of Lenin. While walking towards the graveyard of Lenin, Prabhupada was telling simply rascal. And then there was a great queue to see the dead body of Lenin. So at that time he remarks, this is there in the Srila Prabhupada Leela app, he remarks that you know why there is so much great queue to see the body of Lenin? So disciples said, we don't know, Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, people are coming to see him just to make sure whether he is dead or not, because he was simply rascal. All this Russian revolution happened, but who is happy out of it? Nobody is happy out of it. But see what Krishna consciousness has to offer. And then he gave a very nice talk on Krishna consciousness, the importance of Krishna consciousness, how the leader should be trying to spread it. So therefore, the real purpose of leadership is to give spiritual knowledge to people, and those leaders who try to choke the Krishna consciousness, they will be completely destroyed over a period of time by their own demoniac leadership agenda. And anybody who decides to serve Krishna and carry Krishna, they will become supremely effective and effulgent as instruments in the hand of Guru Parampara. These are the lessons which we can derive from this verse. Now, fast forwarding to the 3rd chapter, where Krishna has now appeared. And as we know that Krishna is inconceivable in his ways, nobody can understand the suffering which Vasudeva and Devaki were going through. There may have been a thought that when Krishna will appear, simply by his one smile, our millions of grief and our millions of miseries will be destroyed. Maybe he'll wipe our tears. Maybe he'll spend some time with us. Maybe he'll give us the joy of our life. But our darling Krishna appears and he tells, look, my dear Vasudeva, I have some important business in Gokul Vrindavan. Can you please pick me up from here and take me to Gokul Vrindavan? Then you come back in this prison and continue your present time. This is Krishna. So the time when Krishna tells him that, my dear Vasudeva, you please pick up me and take me to Gokul Vrindavan, this verse comes, which is a very nice verse, which glorifies Vasudeva also. Tatasya shaurir bhagavat prachoditah sutam samadava sa sutika grahat yada bahir gantum yesha tarhya aja ya yoga mayajani nanda jayaya. Thereafter, exactly when Vasudeva, being inspired by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was about to take the newborn child from the delivery room, Yogamaya, the Lord's spiritual energy, took birth as the daughter of the wife of Maharaj Nanda. So we all know that he goes to Gokul Vrindavan and gets this Yogamaya in and puts Krishna there and gets Yogamaya and puts it next to the prison house, next to Devaki basically. But then there is so much which we can understand from this verse. So Vasudev's another name is Shauri, or a great warrior, or a very very valiant person. So Srila Prabhupada says that anybody who is free of ego is a very valiant person. So a businessman is known by his reputation to do business. If a student says, I'm a very bright student, brilliant, from last 4 years I'm in the 10th standard, then people will wonder what kind of brilliance or intelligence is he exhibiting. Similarly, if a businessman says that I'm a great businessman with a great business acumen, with a great understanding of the market, but I have only 5 crores debt, then people will think, what kind of businessman you are? Similarly, the job description of a Kshatriya is to protect people, save people. And here is Vasudev, who couldn't save his wife on the day of his marriage. Here is Vasudev, who couldn't save his clans from being driven away from their residences and kingdoms by Kamsa. Here is that ruler Vasudev, who could not save his own 6 sons from being killed in front of him. I mean, this is completely against Kshatriya spirit. Had there been anybody else who was not Vasudev, because Vasudev was completely Krishna conscious, but had there been anybody else, or maybe a conditioned soul in that place, they would have got into so much low self-esteem, probably they would have committed suicide. What is this? I like to give this example every time because it makes sense to me. And recently, when I was giving this example, this is the example for doctor. And when I was giving this example in the class, there was a doctor, and they confirmed, yeah, this is what we feel. So I asked that suppose if you're a doctor and the last 15 patients you have diagnosed in the last 15 days, after you diagnosing them and giving them some medicine and treatment, all of them have died. To add to it, in the last 1 week, you have diagnosed 6 babies and all 6 babies have also died. What will you feel? And then the doctor said in the class, yeah, we'll feel like giving up our medical license and we'll hide ourselves for the rest of our life. And it's very big burden to carry. It's very difficult for a doctor to forget that how, due to some inefficiency, someone died. Now, that is the case of Vasudev here also. Imagine if such a doctor who has treated 30 patients and all 30 have died, someone goes and tells him that, okay, a very critical surgery is about to come. You need to perform this operation. So that doctor has low self-confidence, doesn't feel like doing anything, and then he's being forced to do a critical surgery, which is next to impossible. So that is the condition of Vasudev. He has failed so many times in the last few years, and now the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes in front of him and gives him an impossible mission, that you please pick me up from here, when his neck, hands, waist and legs are shackled. And he tells him that you please take me out of this prison house when all the 7 doors of the prison are heavily guarded and heavily locked. And then he tells him that you please go out in the dead of the night when it is heavily raining and reach Gokul Vrindavan without a Gokul map or an Uber car. And then deliver this child somewhere and come back within the prison with another baby who belongs to someone else and bring him here and keep him here. I mean, if anybody else would have been there who's thinking that they are the doer, they would have gone crazy. Imagine if Krishna comes here and gives me this task. I will ask so many questions. Can you please help me to understand who has the keys of this prison house? Can you please help me to understand, my dear Lord, that you are asking me to pick the child up, but how can I move from here? Can you please help me with the Google map of Vrindavan? Or can you please give me the mobile number of Nand Baba, Nand Maharaj? And after seeing so many questions, Krishna would have told, I will only do the service. Your service was supposed to give pleasure to me, but looks like I have to do it myself now because your questions are not giving pleasure. So, but Vasudev did not do that. Vasudev was completely Krishna conscious. He knew that I am not the doer, Krishna is the doer. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada says, both elation in success and moroseness in defeat is because of false ego. And those who are Krishna conscious, they do not worry about success or defeat. Their only intention is to serve Krishna. His Holiness Bhakti Tirth Maharaj used to say that whenever you get some seva, whether you are qualified to do it or whether you are unqualified to do it, the moment you decide to sincerely attempt it for the pleasure of Krishna, in that very moment, empowerment to do that service comes. And this consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. Only such a person can understand that I am not the doer. The best example is Srila Prabhupada. In the face of hopelessness, in the face of old age, where personalities like Sumati Moraji were telling him that, old man, you will die if you go there. You don't know anything, you don't have money, you don't know anybody there. Why are you going? But because Srila Prabhupada was fully conscious that I am not the doer, Krishna is the doer. So therefore, he was ready to take that risk. Please read the prayers of the Jaladuta, where Prabhupada is expressing his extreme humility. And he is actually feeling that I am unqualified, I cannot do this seva. But somehow or the other, my dear Lord, you have brought me here. Somehow or the other, the mercy of my spiritual master is there on me. So this consciousness is very important for all the people who want to serve Krishna and who want to please Krishna. To understand that I am not the doer, Krishna is the doer. And only with such consciousness we can actually serve Krishna, because Krishna is inconceivable and the circumstances in which the services of Krishna are executed are also inconceivable. So in order to serve in an inconceivable environment where you don't even know in what way you are being used as an instrument, it is important to be having this consciousness that I am not the doer, Krishna is the doer. Let me cooperate with his desires and let me not ask unnecessarily 108 questions without even attempting to do what has been asked of me to do. In fact, in one way, when we are given a mission that, okay, make Bangalore a Krishna conscious city, we should plan for it, we should strive towards it, we should work for it. But not doing anything, simply asking 108 questions, is like not having faith in the instruction, thinking that I am the doer. Not progressing further means not understanding that Krishna is the doer. So if we, although we may not be qualified to do so, but if we can simply have faith in this instruction and understand that Krishna is the doer and simply become instruments, even without knowing the big picture or the complete plan of the Lord, if we even work in that consciousness, we will be successful and we will please Krishna actually. So the concept or the idea or the lesson which we can derive from this verse is, after that we know that very famous pastime happens where Vasudeva tries to, doesn't think of anything and just follows the instruction of Krishna with full faith. As he proceeds to lift the baby Krishna, the shackles break. So the Bhagavatam says, when the sun rises, darkness automatically disappears. Similarly, when Vasudeva appeared with Krishna in his hand, the closed doors, which were strongly pinned with iron and locked with iron chains, opened automatically. Since the clouds in the sky were mildly thundering and showering, Anantanag, an expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, followed Vasudeva, beginning from the door, with hoods expanded to protect Vasudeva and his transcendental master, Krishna. So the key lesson from this verse is that we should carry Krishna with us all the time. At this point of time, I would like to say something which is just for general knowledge. Sometimes we see painting of Vasudeva carrying Krishna on his head. But actually, the reality is that Vasudeva was carrying Krishna like this. If we give you some diamonds, will you always not protect it close to your chest, or will you put it on your head there so that someone can lift and go away? So Vasudeva was carrying Krishna very close to his heart. That is the significance here. Not just physically very close to his heart, but he was carrying Krishna in his heart. And when someone carries Krishna in their heart, then the shackles of birth, death, old age and disease break. So it's not a great wonder if some shackles made of iron are breaking away. One who carries Krishna in their heart the enemies called as the lust, anger, greed, illusion, enviousness, and attachments go to sleep. So, what is the big deal if some guards go to sleep for someone who's carried Krishna in their heart? Similarly, one who carries Krishna on his tongue by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. For such people, the doors of the spiritual world open. So, what is the big wonder if the 7 doors of a normal prison house opened? So, therefore, we try to begin our day every day by carrying Krishna in our mind and in our heart, by chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. And just like Vasudev, when he was carrying Krishna in his mind and heart and tongue, all the problems disappeared. So, with the same affirmation, we should come every day into our sadhana, into our seva, thinking that today I will come closer to Krishna and all the obstacles which are there in the path of my pure devotional service will be removed by Krishna. One should not be negative before beginning the japa session that from the last 30 days my japa has gone bad. Today also it will be bad. Imagine how much this negative affirmation will affect us. But somehow or the other, if we have hope against hope, that today Krishna will try to assist me. Today Krishna will help me in my japa. Today Krishna will help me in my seva. Today Krishna will somehow take care of me. Because Vasudeva approached that baby Krishna with that consciousness. He was completely positively affirmed that I have to perform the instruction of Krishna, come what may. And he was not thinking negatively. He was just going with his full capacity. So similarly, if we chant Hare Krishna, then the day when Lord Chaitanya wants, all our problems will disappear and we will be very sincerely pleasing Shri Gandharvika and Giridhari by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Fast forwarding to the next chapter, that is chapter number 4. Vasudeva has gone and kept the newborn baby into the house of Nand Baba. And then he has brought Yogmaya, the daughter, the girl, back into the prison. He has brought her and kept her next to Yashoda. And he has put the shackles back on himself. And the moment this has happened, the girl has started crying. And then the news reaches Kamsa. Oh, the 8th child has come. And then Kamsa comes running and then enters the prison house, catches hold of the daughter, the Yogmaya, by one leg, and in the same way was about to go and thrash her on a rock. We pause the scene there. At that time, Devaki intervened. 10th canto, chapter 4, shloka number 5. Bahavo himsita bhratah shishavah pavako pamaha tvaya daiva nishishtena putra kaika pradiyatam. So, Devaki is telling, my dear brother, Bahavo himsita bhrata, you have committed so much violence. You have already killed many of my babies. But then, Shishavaha, and all these babies were Shishavaha, Pavako, Pamaha. They were, each of them were as bright and beautiful as fire. But, Tvaya Daiva Nishrishtena, by the influence of destiny, all this happened. Putra Kaika Pradayitam. Kindly spare this one daughter and give her to me as your gift. So here we see the difference between the character of Devaki and the character of Kamsa. As soon as Kamsa came to know that the child is crying in the prison house, Kamsa came running and held her by one leg and was about to slam her on the rock. That is Kamsa. That is a non-devotee. Only worried about their own sense gratification. Even if it means kill somebody for your sensory pleasure, do it. But a devotee is not like that. A devotee is para dukkha dukkhi. Try to replace Devaki by some conditioned soul here. Some conditioned soul whose 6 sons have died, seventh son, 6 children have died, doesn't know where the seventh child, and the eighth child came after so much difficulty, and then that was also taken away. How much despair and hopelessness will be there? And then if someone else's child comes here in front of that mother who has been deprived of her 8 children, and somebody is coming and killing the eighth child, or that somebody else's child who has come here, what she will care of? Anyways, my 8 children have died, let this one also die. But Devaki is not like that. Devaki is paradukha dukhi. All this time, her 7 sons were being tortured, killed, especially the 6 sons. She was not protesting. But look at the noble character of Devaki. When somebody else's child is being killed, she is protesting. She is saying, my dear brother, by the influence of destiny, you have already killed many babies, each of them as bright and as beautiful as fire, but kindly spare this daughter. Give her to me as your gift. This is called devotee. Paradukha dukhi. She is now thinking that, okay, my children were murdered by my brother. Let that be destiny. Let that be my bad fate. But how can I allow someone else's child to be killed now? This is not my child. This is someone else's child. So this is my responsibility. And I have to save her. Till now, I did not protest. But now I will protest. This is the qualification to become the mother of God. And therefore, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada glorifies Devaki very nicely. Prabhupada says that very nicely Devaki is exhibiting how she is the daughter of a great Kshatriya and how she is very good at politics. So politics means repression, like repress someone, that is called as dhamma, then try to have a conversation with someone, that is called as sama, and then ask for a dan, that is called gift. This strategy can also be used when we go out for fundraising. We will discuss that later. But here you see what Devaki is doing. First, she applied pressure on Kamsa. Bahavo himsita bhrata, my dear brother, you have already killed so many babies of mine. So one will go on a back foot. Yeah, I have killed so many babies. But then she says that is called dhamma, repression. She is playing a political game with Kamsa. Prabhupada writes, in politics there are different methods of achieving success. First repression, dhamma, then compromise, sama, and then asking for a gift, dan. So Devaki first adopted the policy of repression by directly attacking Kamsa for having cruelly and atrociously killed her 6 babies. First she said, Bhavo himsita bhrata. Kamsa would be thinking, yeah, I've actually killed her. I'm a bad man. But then she said, compromise, sama. But it was not your fault. You know? Tvaya daiva nishshrestena. So it was not your fault. It was destiny. So Kamsa will feel, okay, yeah, she's understanding my situation. Therefore, let me become her friend now. So then what she did? Dhamma. And then she compromised by saying that it was not your fault. So just give me this child for all the wrong things you have done, for all the killings which you have done. So in this way, we understand the great devotional nature of Devaki as well as the great political nature of Devaki. So the lesson which we can derive from this incident is that one should learn to use their own nature in Krishna consciousness to serve Krishna with a desire to please Krishna. Different people have different natures. Vasudeva had a different nature. Devaki had a different nature. Akrura had a different nature. But all of them, they used their nature to please Krishna according to the time, place, and circumstances, with a desire to please Krishna, with a desire to save Krishna and the interests of Krishna. And that is what Srila Prabhupada also taught everybody. He saw the nature of his various disciples and engaged them accordingly and told them to constantly try to please Krishna and serve Krishna and dovetail their nature under the guidance of Guru to please Krishna. So on that point, I would like to stop today. at the 4th chapter. Whenever time permits, we will discuss more. If there are any questions, comments, reflections, they are welcome. We have 2 to 3 minutes.
I want to know that taking punishment from Krishna is also a mercy. What made Kamsa worthy of having punishment from
So the question is, what made Kamsa worthy of being chastised or punished by Krishna? There can be many answers to this question, but the primary answer is that, of course, Kamsa was destined to be punished by Krishna. He was Kal Nemi in his previous lifetime, and it was destined that he'll be killed. But more importantly, Kamsa was used as an instrument, just like Parikshit was used as an instrument to bring Srimad Bhagavatam in this world. The Supreme Lord uses his pure devotees to teach lessons to us. So, in order to teach lesson to the entire world, what it means to bring Krishna, or what it means to become relatives of Krishna, what it means to become servants of Krishna, how Nanda Baba became father of Krishna to become a servant of Krishna, how Mother Yashoda became the mother of Krishna to become a servant of Krishna, how Devaki went through so much trouble, but still uh, she she didn't give up on any point in order to receive Krishna in her life, to show that any amount of suffering in the service of Krishna is the greatest bliss which one can have in their life. In order to show and teach these lessons to everybody, that one needs to make some sacrifices to achieve Krishna. One needs to have that uh, complete surrender, complete devotion, and no sense of personal security while serving Krishna. In order to teach these lessons, Kamsa was used as an instrument. Also, because Kamsa was somehow or the other related to these pure devotees of Krishna, so he became worthy of being punished by Krishna. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandha. Somehow Kamsa was worthy of that because of the association of the pure devotees, and also Krishna was using him as an instrument in various ways. This is my understanding. Maybe others can also comment.
Hey Krishna, so this statement was nice. Devaki conceived the inconceivable. So that is nice. And then I relished this point when Vasudeva was carrying Krishna. So shackles were broken, doors opened, enemies went to sleep. Anatasesh comes for protection, and all problems disappears. So if we also can carry Krishna in our hearts, so like all the obstacles for the preaching, will be removed. So it was a very nice point. Thanks.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for the class. Empowerment comes with service. So when the service is given, like here we see, you nicely described that how as soon as the service was given, Vasudev didn't ask questions. He just picked the child and started. So, and whatever was needed happened. So similarly, we understand in preaching endeavors, we have to just be an instrument and just keep doing the service for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, and all the empowerment that is needed. If we have purity of purpose, that will come. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Pradipana Pranam. One point you said, Prabhuji, when the time comes, at the time of Kamsa trying to kill the Devaki from the sword, that time Kamsa, Vasudev pacify and trying to stop them, and then he glorifying Kamsa, because when he glorify Kamsa, then he pacify, then he will listen what Kamsa saying. Then uh, Vasudev nicely explains that. I will give that children you that, but this time it is no harm for you. There's no anything problem. So that's why you leave the then I will give all the baby you, and you can do whatever you want. then this is pacification in your said in the mind is like a uh, mirror of the face is like a mirror of the mind, and so much distress in background in the Vasudev mind, but still he was smiling and talking to the Kansa. So just like we are also when going to outside, and some people not responding, or some people when we going to the book division, they said हट यहाँ से, वैसा भी वो लोग ये करते, कुछ लोग देखते हैं फिर भी जाने बिना वैसे ही चले जाते, तो हम उसको छोड़ देना और फिर से आगे को निकलना है। जब भी हम निकलेंगे, हम अब एक वीडियो देखा था वैशिष्य के प्रभु जी के, वो जब बुक डिविजन के लिए जाते हैं तो देखते so he look in one person and he said, "Oh, your eyes looking like a spiritual. How are we staying there?" Just friendly talking, then he passing, then उसके बाद अच्छे से बात करते हैं उसका, "Oh, इसने इस रास्ते से, वो इस ट्रेस से, मैं भी उसी से आया था, मैं भी वहीं पर रहता हूँ, तो आपको अब कहीं नहीं देखा।" तो ऐसा फ्रेंडन करके उसके बाद बुक देते, "दिस नाइस बुक्स यू वांट टू ले सी", देन सेड नाइसली एक्सप्लेन्स वैसे का प्रो, वैसे भी हम कुछ एक्सपेरिमेंट कर सकते। हरे कृष्ण।
जगत गुरु श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।